Hey you guys, I am back here with another video that I felt very strongly about filming today and trying to get up as fast as I can. It's Monday, I think. Okay, so what I wanted to do is like a wax 101 video on destashes. I know I did a wax 101 video that kind of encompassed all of like wax tarts and stuff, but I wanted to, and talked about destashes, but I wanted to do one specifically only on destashes. And the reason that I want to do this is for anyone that's new to the wax community, I just want to try to make you like an educated buyer, or at least give you like a jumping off point that you can go and do some more research on destashes, because I just want to make sure that you guys understand like what a destash is, how much the average one costs, etc. Just so you kind of know like what's out there, just so you can be an educated buyer is really the only reason I'm doing this. Now, I say this in all these Wax 101 videos, I'm not an expert. I only started melting vendor wax in like October of 2013, so I'm like a newbie at this thing. I'm a baby, but I've hovered enough and I picked up a couple things here and there. But for any of the more experienced people watching this, if you want to like, please put in the comments, if you think I misspoke about something, or if you want to add your 2 cents, or I basically want to try to make this video like just a stopping point for anybody that wants to learn about destashes can come here, watch the video, read the comments, and then leave feeling more confident in how to buy a destash. So the first question I want to talk about is, what is a destash? So a destash is basically when someone who just owns from their own stash of wax, that has a lot of wax, basically wants to resell it to somebody else. And destash is just the word that's used for reselling wax from your own stash of wax, really is what it is. So why do people destash wax? Either something may not be their particular fragrance preference. Like personally, I don't like serendipity. So if I have something with serendipity, it's probably going to get destashed. It doesn't mean serendipity is bad at all. It just means that's just my own personal fragrance preference, right? People also destash if they just have too much wax, and I like to think that people do it, and I've heard people talk about it, because they just want their wax to get melted. Like, it would be a shame to let wax go to waste. And I think I'm experiencing that myself because I have a lot of it. But it's just they would rather have somebody melt their wax than nobody melt the wax. So they would rather destash it. It doesn't mean it's bad wax at all. It's just, they're good people, and in their heart, that's just what they want to do. Now, there's a couple other reasons people destash, and one of them really upsets me. And it's people that destash stuff because they don't think it's good. Now, whether wax is good or bad is always subjective, but I've seen people before, like they'll be talking about a vendor on Facebook and they'll make a comment like, man, I ordered from that vendor and they were terrible, so I destashed everything, like nothing through. It's like, well, if it was that terrible and nothing through, then why are you destashing it? Like, you're gonna have somebody else that doesn't know any better pay you for that wax that you think is terrible? I mean, I've had vendors before that I own from that sometimes I get a throw from them, sometimes I don't, right? But I personally would never try to push wax on somebody that I honestly thought was bad wax. And actually, I don't think I've come across any vendor that I thought so far has had bad wax. In my experiences, I'm sure they're out there. But, when people do stuff like that, I don't think that's cool. I think that's pretty fucking terrible, actually, that people do that. And I don't understand why we as a community don't like jump on that person and be like, well, why did you destash it then? Like, that's not cool. Anyway, so people destash for different reasons. It's hard to say why people destash. Now, in order to find out, for buying destashes, here's really what to do. If you want to buy a destash, the places to buy destashes are either YouTube channels, like I've destashed on my channel. I think Made Up Like a Doll destashes on her channel. I've seen Sukazi, I may be mispronouncing that, she destashes on her channel, right? So people do that on YouTube. People also would destash on Facebook group pages that are meant for like destashing wax or handmade soap or stuff like that. And you can probably find them easily. I'm not going to list them here. Some are much bigger than others, so you'll eventually probably gravitate towards the ones that are bigger. I've been members of some of the ones that are like pretty small, and maybe like one destash will come up every other day, and it's kind of like, well, there's not a whole lot going on in here. So you'll probably end up gravitating to the ones where things move pretty fast and there's a lot of destashes. Now, in the Facebook groups, so those are the places to get it, YouTube and Facebook. Now, the Facebook group pages that have destashes, how do you know who to buy from? This is the hardest part. So before you go buying any destashes, I highly recommend that you like hover on the pages first and lurk. Some of the Facebook destash group pages will have like a file where you can go to the file and you can get feedback on buyers and sellers. So like, if a seller is good, it'll be like, wax was as described, fast shipping, great destash, blah, 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 great price. as far as the buyer goes, you may want to be like, prompt payment made, no issues. And there have been issues with buyers too. It's not always the sellers. There have been people that buy destashes and claim it's bad and then try to get their money back and then turn around and re-destash it. I don't know, right? But it's always like buyer beware, kind of on both sides. It's always better to know who you're dealing with. So I would recommend hitting up the files and kind of seeing, hey, maybe who's got some good feedback. And then also you can tell with the destashes, some people's destashes go super fast. Like they'll put it up and then like literally within 2 minutes it's gone. I mean, those are probably the ones that are pretty good. Some will put up a destash and they'll kind of sit there for 6 to 12 to 18 hours. And it's not like they're bad destashers, but you may want to look at it and be like, well, why isn't it moving? Is it the person? Is it the price? Is it the scents? Like right now going into spring, fall destashes are probably not going to move that fast. So I'm not saying that if your destash doesn't sell that you're a bad destasher. Sorry. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just saying that it's for people that their destashes continually sell really fast are probably ones that you can trust. But lurk, like watch, check out the files, kind of see what's going on. And then whenever people buy a destash, normally the post will stay open on Facebook until the destash is received. And then that person would normally post, got the destash today, everything was great, blah, blah, blah. So you can kind of keep an eye on that too and see how stuff is moving. So that's kind of how to know who to buy from. I'm sorry that may not have been super helpful, but it's hard to tell. I mean, I bought 3 destashes from 3 separate people when I first joined the wax community, and the one person I bought from first was Kirby. If you guys go way back in my channel, you can see I filmed the destashes I bought from her. Sorry, I'm kind of sick over here, so my nose is running. But I mean, you can see the destashes I bought from her. They were well priced, they were great wax, all within 4 months old, etc. So like I knew Kirby had an excellent reputation as a destasher, so when I first started buying, I knew I wanted to get from her, and that's what I did. So hopefully you can find somebody that you can trust, like, the destash groups. Okay, the next thing I want to talk about is wax age. This is not something that people talk about a whole heck of a lot. I think people are talking about it more. Like I know personally when I get wax, I will put the age of the wax on everything, or what the age at least that I get it, or sometimes they have pour dates of their own. But to me, wax age is very important. So I'm probably not going to pay like a premium price for like 100% soy wax that's 8 months old, right? I mean, wax has a shelf life. Soy wax tends to, I think, go quote unquote bad probably faster than wax that's all paraffin and parasoy, somewhere in between. So some people, when they destash, you'll see them write something like, all wax is less than 4 months old. Some people like me will put a date on every single piece of wax, and some people don't have any dates at all. But I feel like it's important to know the age, because you don't want to get something that's super old and super nasty. And if there's no ages listed on there of how old everything is, you're not going to know. Now, I'm not saying that everyone has to go like OCD like me and put a date on every single piece of wax. But in general, if somebody was like, all wax is like somewhere in the 4 to 6 month old range, I think that's like definitely acceptable. But if that's something that's important to you and it's not listed on a destash, then I would say ask. Definitely there's nothing wrong with asking. Okay, now to the bigger part of this, which is pricing. Now, as far as buying stuff, honestly, everyone just needs to have their own comfort zone, really is what it is. I'm only here to give you what I think are like the average prices for wax, and what I'm comfortable with, I'll tell you. But, I mean, what you want to pay is up to you. So, I would say the average destash probably sells for around 50 to maybe 85 cents an ounce for wax, which may or may not include shipping. You'll see it different kinds of ways. Now, retail for wax is like $1 to like $1.15 an ounce for wax is retail, depending on what vendor you buy it from. So, in my opinion, if the price starts to approach retail, for me to buy that, I would have to know why. It'd either have to be like the perfect destasher, or it'd have to be a vendor that's like really hard to get their wax from, or like wax that's like brand spanking new. Like somebody got a destash in the last week and just or got like a wax order in and then immediately destashed it. I mean, there's different variables. People price it differently just depending on, people price it differently because, it's their prerogative, right? Some may charge 50 cents an ounce, maybe based on like the age or the types of vendors in there. Some may go lower, like right now in spring, nobody really wants pumpkin fall apple scents, right? Not a lot of people are looking for that. So if I was to do like a fall destash right now, I'd probably have to price it pretty low because it's just not what people are in the mood for. Like Rose Girl, Sniff My Tarts, there's a couple other ones, like the vendors that are harder to get will go for a higher price. It depends on the person. Personally, if I destash Rose Girls, I don't think I would charge any more than I would if I destashed the rest of my wax. But that, I mean, that's just, it's up to every individual person really what you want to pay. My own personal comfort level would be around 50 to 65 cents an ounce. That's about what I would pay. Like I said, unless it was something I really, really wanted, I don't really think I would go more. But it's just all about whatever your comfort level is. If there's something that you really, really want, and you're willing to pay retail or more than retail for it, hey, that's fine. That's totally on you. Just as long as you know, just as long as you're an educated buyer and you know what you're buying and you understand that you're paying probably more than average for it, and that's totally fine. It's your prerogative as a buyer to pay what you want. I was trying to think if I was going to talk about anything else around here. Okay, so actually I do want to show you the boxes really quick so you guys know. So destashes tend to come in one of these three kinds of boxes. It's either going to be in a regional rate A, a medium flat rate box, or a large flat rate box. I happen to have an example of all three here because I got like 1,000,001 freaking orders in today, and it's like insane. So anyways, I covered up like the tracking numbers and stuff. So this is a regional rate A. You can kind of see, let me put that up a little bit more. So you can kind of see here, like from the sheet, there's like a sheet of paper here. So you can kind of get an idea of like how big it is. It's a little bit smaller on top than an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. So that's kind of the size. You can get the dimensions on the post office thing, you guys. And that's kind of like how high it is right there. So I believe with the regional rate A's, you can put like a maximum of 5 pounds in here, and the shipping depends on where you are in the United States. Most of the time when these get shipped to me, they're around the $10 range. I live out in California. Most of the vendors are from the Midwest or the East Coast. So yeah, around $10, but it could be more or less depending on where you are and where they are. I don't know how much wax you can stuff into this thing if you just stuffed it, but I would imagine it would have to be maybe around like 80 ounces, something like that. Hey, for those of you that have destashed before or bought from a regional rate A, put in the comments please how many ounces you can typically fit in a regional rate A box so people know. So that's what that one is. The next popular box is the medium flat rate box. And if you see this medium flat rate box and my piece of paper, it's pretty much the exact size of a piece of paper on here. And you can tell here it's slightly taller than the regional flat A, but maybe like a ½ inch or something. So this one, vendors I believe can ship this for slightly less than like if I was to ship it, but I think it's around, man, was it 12 bucks to ship this guy? And I know that I've destashed in a medium flat rate box, and I packed them pretty well, and I fit somewhere between 100 to 110 ounces in a medium flat rate box. So I think that's about average what you're going to get there, somewhere between 100 to 110. Now the last one is probably the biggest type you're going to see is a large flat rate box. So it's bigger, like the surface area is bigger on the top. You can tell it's a little bit shorter than your medium flat rate, but when you look at it like this, it's like definitely, you know, bigger in the surface area here. So this is a large flat rate box. I think these are around like 15 bucks to mail, something like that. And I have bought destashes before from Kirby in a large flat rate box, and she fit 200 to 210 ounces of wax in a large flat rate box. So that should give you an idea of what you can fit in a large flat rate. And that's pretty much just like putting the wax one on top of each other with like packaging maybe for like scoopables or, you know, but for the most part, destashes are not going to come all nice and prettily packaged like you could buy from a vendor. It's pretty much just going to be wax just stuffed in there because that's what you want to get, right? You want to get like, you know, as much wax as you can get in the box. So that's how much how much can fit into each of the boxes. So types of destashes I want to go over next and how people list them. So people will list destashes kind of differently. Some people will put the weight of the destash either in like pounds or ounces. You'll see like 4 pounds of wax for X amount shipped, or 110 ounces of wax. So not everybody does that, like list the weight. So, you know, personally for me, when I look at a destash, that's how I would assess whether or not to buy it. Is I would want to know the ounces and then the price, and then I could break down like cost per ounce in my head or whatever. So if you don't list how much it weighs, then I'm kind of looking at it like, well, how am I supposed to know how much this is costing me? And so that's just like one thing to keep in mind. If the cost per ounce is important to you, then make sure on the destash you buy list, you know, how many ounces you're getting out of it. Another question are the scents listed? Some people will like take a picture of all the wax spread out and then like, you know, snap it, and then maybe in the first comment block we'll put like list every single scent that's in there. Some people won't. They'll just snap a picture and you can like zoom in on it to look at the scents, and some people just won't list scents at all. It just really depends. So it's just whatever you're comfortable with buying. personally, I would not feel comfortable spending more than like $40 to $45 for a destash unless I knew specifically what every scent was in there, with the exception of Kirby. And I don't think she's destashing anymore, obviously, since she's running her own company. She doesn't have as much stuff, I think, to destash, but her stuff I would just buy without sight unseen because I knew the destashes were good. But in general, I kind of want to know what's in there if I'm going to be paying a price for it. The other thing is there a picture? Yes, there's almost always a picture for a destash. Some people will like spread it out and take a picture. Some people will put it in the box and take a picture of the top of the box. So it just kind of depends, but in general, there's a picture. Some people will do like a mystery destash. So maybe they'll fill the box and take a picture of the top, and then they won't list the scents. And like that's kind of like the point, is they're not going to tell you what the scents are in there because it's a mystery. So if you buy it, you're buying it, you know, with knowing that you don't know what you're getting, which is why it's a mystery. The last one that I think is hilarious is the ass wax destash. Ass wax. I didn't come up with that. Someone else did on Facebook, and I thought it was freaking hilarious. And that's basically wax that girl was destashing because, you know, it was odor, or, you know, it was like smeared in the package or whatever reason. She didn't feel comfortable destashing it for like, you know, for a price. So she basically put it in a box and said, I'm going to charge $12 for shipping, and whoever wants to pay that gets this box of ass wax. And, you know, it sold really fast. So that's another way that people kind of destash stuff. Now, as far as shipping costs, some people will list like the destash and then say plus shipping. If it's in a regional rate A and they do that, shipping, like I said, could vary. People, like, if I was going to destash, personally, I would just charge 50 cents an ounce, and that would include shipping and PayPal fees, which is kind of on the lower side of the scale. But it really depends. I think people tend to prefer destashes where the shipping is listed as part of the price. It just makes it easier for everyone rather than trying to, like, once you add on shipping, for some reason, it always seems to be like a big deal, and I don't like it myself. So that's just another thing there. All right, I have notes written down on this piece of paper, and I kind of just wanted to go through it. So I can't even remember if I already talked about this, but you know, okay, so I think that's pretty much it, you guys. So that's it for the informational stuff. You guys can click out now if you want to. I'm just going to ramble for another couple minutes on destashes, like my own personal thoughts. So, like, one of the reasons I was really passionate about doing this video, besides the stuff that happened today on the Facebook group pages that prompted me to do it, but when I bought my first destash, did I already tell this story? I'm looking at my husband, he doesn't know. When I bought my first destash, I bought it off of a small Facebook group page, and the girl had charged me like $100. I believe it did come in a large flat rate box, but I just wasn't that happy with the wax. A lot of it looked odor. The whole thing to me smelled like cigarette smoke. And then I think once I figured out like kind of how much it weighed, I realized that I had what I think way overpaid for it. So I know that me as a buyer, and having been so new at the time, would have definitely appreciated somebody maybe like giving me a heads up, like, I think this is a little on the high side, because then I wouldn't have bought it. And, you know, it's not necessarily the girl's fault for posting it like that. It's kind of like, well, I wasn't an educated buyer. You know, I went around flopping around my $100 without knowing what the heck I was buying, you know, so I felt stupid. I felt really stupid. So that's the reason I wanted to do this video. It's just, we all need to be educated buyers. You know, and it's not like destashes have to be good or bad in terms of the wax. I mean, like, I would buy an ass wax destash as long as I knew it was an ass wax destash and I was comfortable with the price that I was paying. You know what I mean? Like, if there's something out there that you really want and you're willing to pay a ton for it, go for it. It's, you know, it's your comfort level. But I'm just a really big proponent of, you should really try to know what you're buying. Like, when you're spending your own hard-earned money on something, you should know what it is that you're buying. And shame on me for not researching destashes more before I bought that one that I regretted buying, for sure. So that's just kind of my thoughts on this. Like I said, I'm no expert. Please leave in the comments if you have any questions on destashes, or for the more experienced people out there, if you want to, you know, leave comments as well, you know, your own opinion. What's your personal comfort level with destashes, so people can get like a better idea of what the average, I would say, cost is and things like that. I'm really trying to make this a good starting point for people who want to buy destashes, so they can buy destashes confidently and hopefully not get ripped off. So my voice is going, my nose is all stuffed up. So I hope this video was helpful, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Bye.